So today I was in the mood to do some baking, so I decided that I would make some pumpkin bread. This is a really delicious recipe. I first made it in February, and since then I have edited the recipe a little bit. So you're going to start off with 1.5 sticks of butter. I just used a Kerrygold and I used 12 tablespoons. And to get it to room temperature, because I forgot to pull it out, I used a jar that I filled with warm water and then dumped so that it would keep the steam, and then I just put that over the butter until the butter was softened. I had to repeat the process 2 or 3 times to get it to the temperature that I wanted, and to be honest, I was a little impatient because it didn't get as soft as I had hoped, but I figured it would work out okay, but definitely make sure it gets soft enough because it didn't end up working out okay. And I'm not sure if it's because I substituted some of the sugar for allulose or if I just had bad luck with the butter today, but I got a medium-sized bowl. I put that softened butter into the bowl, and for this I ended up substituting some of the sugar for allulose, like I said, but that's definitely not required. It'll taste just as good either way. I just wanted to do it a little low sugar. I also took out half a cup of the sugar that I would normally do, just for the sake of health, but it honestly tastes better like this, in my opinion. So it was 1.5 cups of sugar total. I substituted it and did half a cup and a quarter cup of allulose and then half a cup and a quarter cup of sugar so that I didn't take out too much of the sugar just for the sake of the bread. And then from there, I just beat the butter and sugar to the best of my ability, though it didn't end up working out like I said. I mean, it still turned out fine. The butter just kind of clumped up a little more than I hoped for, and it made it a little bit harder to mix and combine. But it ended up working out fine, and you can use a stand mixer for this as well. I just prefer the hand mixer because I can use whatever size bowl, and honestly, you're a lot more in control of what's going on with your dessert that you're baking. So I went ahead and mixed those things together. This is kind of what it looked like. I wasn't really happy with it, but there was nothing I could do about it. I beat it for quite a while. So here I'm adding in 2 fresh eggs, and I did them one at a time, combining between each one, and on the second egg I added the vanilla. So I added, well, it was two room temperature eggs, and then I did a little more than 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Not anything major, it just ended up being a little more than 2 teaspoons, but I recommend not being too particular about how much vanilla because vanilla is always delicious. And the other reason you want to make sure your eggs are room temperature is just to make sure that you don't have too much of an eggy flavor that comes through the baked bread, so it tastes less like a quiche and more like a pumpkin bread. But I mean, it's not a big deal if they're refrigerated. Here I'm just adding the vanilla. As you can see, I wasn't too particular about how much I did. In my opinion, there's never too much vanilla. Vanilla is really delicious. I added a sprinkle of ginger, and then I did 1 teaspoon of ground cardamom. You can not put that in if you're not really into the flavor, but it makes it much better. And then I did a tablespoon of cinnamon, and again, that's also just pretty much however much you want to do. I personally like a lot of cinnamon, so I did a little extra, but a tablespoon works just fine as well. Then I opened up a can of pumpkin, and from the pumpkin, you're going to use 15 ounces. You can use a normal size can. Most cans are 15 ounces, and most cans are also 8, but most of them will be 15-ounce cans. This one was a 29, so I just scooped out and measured on a scale to make sure I had the right amount. I went ahead and just put that pumpkin into the mixture. Oh, also, make sure you're using pure pumpkin puree and not pumpkin pie mix because They both have very different ingredients. Pumpkin puree is just plain pumpkin, and pumpkin pie mixture has a lot of additives and a lot of extra things that we can't use. So make sure it is just pure puree. So after I mixed that, make sure not to mix it too much also, because when you overbeat your eggs, sometimes it'll form a crust on the top that is close to a quiche or something similar to that. So make sure you don't over mix the eggs, because it will make a crust. I added a teaspoon of salt, and then I did 1 teaspoon baking soda, and then I did half a teaspoon of baking powder. If you don't have one of the ingredients, 1 tablespoon, for example, 1 tablespoon of baking soda is 2 tablespoons of baking powder, and 2 tablespoons of baking powder is 1 tablespoon of baking soda. It's pretty simple, but I don't always have that stuff. The next thing that you're going to add is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You cannot use gluten-free flour in substitution. I did try it. It turned out fine for this recipe, but I would say just for the sake of simplicity, don't use gluten-free flour. Again, you can if you really feel like it, but there's a possibility your bread won't end up turning out. I just went ahead and combined all those ingredients until they were mixed, but do not overmix the flour. That's the other crucial thing, or else it will come out kind of almost like biscotti type texture. So with the second cup of flour, use a spatula, fold it very carefully. Make sure not to overbeat it again, because that flour will end up activating much more than you'd like it to. So I mixed that up really quick. And I mean, you could use your hands for this, but I don't recommend it. I have before. It's just kind of messy, and honestly, it's pretty hard to get all the flour incorporated. And again, you can use the mixer for this, just have it on low speed and don't overmix it. At this point, it should be kind of a pale orange, and that's when you know you're done. And also make sure there's no flour pockets, because it'll make the baking process a little weird. I got silicone baking tins, and I know you're not really supposed to use these for baking, but they're what I have, and they're also small, so I rinsed those out, and then I dried them really well, because you don't want moisture or else your bread will be soggy. So I dried those, and then I just distributed the batter evenly between both of them. You don't want it more than 3/4 filled, or else it will spill over, and that's really not good in the oven. So I filled them each to 3/4, and if you have a larger tin, it might only fit in 1 tin, and if you use smaller ones, it might go into 3, but for me, these are slightly smaller than a standard loaf pan, and I needed to fill 2. As you can see, I had some batter on the sides. That's not ideal because those parts will burn, but I couldn't get them off. I forgot to add chocolate chips into the main recipe, but you can add walnuts, chocolate chips, hazelnuts, almonds, whatever you feel like topping it with, just straight on top. That's what I did. Or you can also mix it in. Just make sure it's not too much stuff on the inside as opposed to it being on the outside, because it will disrupt the baking process a little bit and you might end up with burnt parts and without the middle being fully cooked. So after I was done with this, I went ahead and put these at the oven at 325 Fahrenheit, and I left those in there for 70 minutes. But it can be anywhere from 65 to 75. It just depends on the heat of the house and how many times you're opening the oven. By the way, don't open the oven if possible. It's really bad to open the oven during the baking because sometimes your breads will be flat, sometimes the middles won't be cooked. And then from there, I got a cooling rack. If you don't have these, that's fine, but definitely move them out of the tin or they will end up being soggy. Preferably move them onto any slotted item just so that the bottoms don't get smushy or anything. So after it cooled for about 30 minutes, it should be ready to cut. I did not let mine cool just that long because I needed to make sure that the inside was nice and cooked. It was. So I went ahead and cut it a little early, and as you can see, it started to crumble a little bit, and there was a lot of steam still inside, so don't do that. I was very impatient. But honestly, you can get anywhere from 12 very thick slices to 30 thinner slices, and this bread is honestly really delicious with some coffee or a tea or whatever drink you want to drink with it. Even some milk is really good. This can be kept in a Ziploc or a glass container in the freezer for up to 2 months, and then it can also be put in the fridge, still good for about a week, though it will start to stale at that point. Hopefully this is a good recipe and you guys try it out. Please let me know what you guys thought about it. Thank you guys for watching.